Hello and welcome to Spectrum, TealTV's newest political talk show. On this show, Gray and I will discuss local, national, and international current events and then relate them to our world here at UNCW.
On this program, you will be exposed to two opposing viewpoints, one from the left and one from the right.
In doing so, we'll allow you to make your own decision on the issues of the day. Representing the left, I'm Jake Lampke.
Representing the right, I'm Gray Underwood.
I'm a junior pre-law student studying psychology. I have a background in constitutional law as well as civil procedure, and above all, I believe in the Constitution and that every person should be equally protected by it.
I'm a senior finance and economics student. I'm the president of the UNCW College Republicans, and I'm a business-minded conservative, and I've been following politics closely since the 2008 election.
On this show, we endorse no specific candidate or party.
Instead, we represent the ideologies that form their foundation.
And with that, let's go to the first topic on the spectrum, the Syrian migrant crisis. In 2011, the Arab Spring took hold in the Middle East. Democratic uprisings occurred in countries like Egypt, Libya, Yemen, and Syria. However, not all these uprisings were successful. The Syrian regime is locked in a stalemate with the rebels and now the newly emerging Islamic State. This conflict has displaced millions of people, and other countries are calling on the U.S. to take in some refugees. Some argue that this is a threat and an undue burden to our economy. However, the proposal only calls for admitting 10,000 migrants. Gray, how can such a small number really hinder our economy so much to justify not letting them in?
Economically, I don't think it's going to be really a problem. What we really have to worry about are security threats. So far, we've only taken in about 2,000. Like you said, the plan is taking 10,000, but we have 25,000 who've applied. Now, yes, we can vet these. The U.S. has the most highly regulated vetting system in the world. We use the UN's data as well as 4 federal departments' data to regulate them. That said, all that data is catching are the higher-ups, people who show up on terrorist networks, people who are, the major players, and a few minor players. That said, it's not hard to take a person who has recently been radicalized, send them overseas, and say, hey, just wait, we'll contact you later. That's the one thing we have to watch out for. Now, 2/3 of these people are women and children, so it's not a high percentage of people coming over here, but it's still something to keep an eye on.
Why would terrorists try to get people into the country in the way that we are most expecting them to do so?
They've said they've had. And it's ISIS. They've lived up to everything they've said so far. Why wouldn't they? Why would they lie on this?
Well, so just using one of the arguments from your own side of the issue, the southern border is not very well protected, right?
No, not at all.
So why on earth would a terrorist try to send an operative through a vetting system that they know they're going to have a lot of eyes on them when they could just as easily put them into Mexico and have them go up through the Mexican border?
Now, one strategy they could be using is sending one through and hoping they get caught, so everyone freaks out about that system. Right now, there's actually, saw an article today that there's actually more Chinese people coming through the southern border than there are Mexican. So you're getting a very diverse group coming up. That is definitely something to watch out for. But and I kind of agree with you on that. There's no one answer to all of it, but at the same time, we shouldn't be lax on the people coming in.
But these people are refugees, I think that we all have kind of a thought in our head of what these people look like and what they are like because of what we see on the news. But in reality, the vast majority, 99.9999%, are just people that were living in a war-torn country, got their home taken away from them, and are trying to find asylum somewhere. And I think that saying that terrorists are going to try to use that to get operatives in the country is a little misguided, because to me it seems like that would be one of the more difficult ways to get someone into the country.
Well, they're not the smartest people on earth. We're talking about Islamic terrorists. But what we have, and yes, that is the thing, but another thing you have to look at is it's a totally different culture. Look at Europe. We've had a skyrocket in rape, skyrocket in sexual assaults. New Year's in Cologne, I don't remember the exact number, but when they were arrested by police, they laughed about it. It's a totally different culture, and we need to make sure that these are actually safe people we're bringing in.
Well, first of all, just as a whole, immigrants commit less crime than their native-born counterparts. Furthermore,
that's a very broad statistic.
Yeah, well, speaking right towards the example you were talking about, the skyrocketing rapes and things of that nature. Obviously you're going to have difficulties with culture clash, but something that's great about America is that immigrants come here, and within one generation, they're CEOs and doctors and lawyers and politicians and everything. And saying that they culturally can't mix with us has been disproven time and time again in our history.
I didn't say that. I just said it's something you have to watch out for. I mean, it's not like a previous example. It's what's going on right now. And yeah, you're right that immigrants do great things for this country. But what I'm saying is, these aren't the safest immigrants there are. These aren't like the poor from Ireland or the poor from Europe. They're from a war-torn area.
I would agree with you that maybe we should have a more stringent vetting process, but I don't think that this marginal threat to security, which is what I would deem it, is really worth turning our back on our American values.
And I don't advocate that, but what I am advocating is keep an eye on these people.
So do you not want them to come in at all? Or?
No, I'm fine with them coming in as long as we keep an eye on them, make sure that they are safe, not dangerous people.
Because we do have a duty to help those.
Exactly, but we also have a duty to protect our own citizens.
Now let's turn to a state story that has started a national debate. Recently, in the North Carolina legislature, they passed a law overriding local government anti-discrimination laws for LGBT individuals. This law has been met with severe disapproval at home and around the country. The mayor of San Francisco has banned government travel in North Carolina. Companies like American Airlines, which has a hub in Charlotte, has voiced their disapproval. And even the NCAA is reevaluating hosting tournament games in the state. So my question to you, Gray, is why are they all wrong? Now,
let's go back to the very beginning of this law. The original Charlotte ordinance, drafted up by a convicted pedophile, no less, was pushed through, last fall, I believe. Mayor Jennifer Roberts was warned in advance by Pat McCrory that said, if you pass this law, we will override it. And their main problem with that law was that it prohibited private businesses from setting the bathroom standards that they wanted to set. So like private gyms, clothing stores, whatever, could not set their own changing and bathroom policies. So the legislature got together and passed this law. Now, all it says is that you have to use, only in public buildings, so state and federal buildings, you have to use the bathroom that is designated on your birth certificate. Private businesses, so restaurants, clubs, gyms, whatever, can set whatever bathroom standard they want. Now, once you have gender reassignment surgery, you can change your birth certificate. The only law this affects is that tiny margin of the population that's still in transition. So I think this has been a huge overreaction on the part of North Carolina Democrats and North Carolina liberals.
Yeah, so if it's really not that big of a deal, why do you think people are making such a big deal out of it?
Well, here's the thing. In North Carolina, once the Democrats were the ruling party, if you will, for years and years and years.
Only in Charlotte, though.
Well, no, in North Carolina, we just recently had a Republican majority in the state Congress in 2012. Now, once the way North Carolina is set up, it's very hard to fire people, and once you have a majority, it's hard to flip the sides. So the North Carolina Democrats are doing everything they can to make the Republicans look bad, make Pat McCrory look bad, and I think they've definitely pushed a lot of this negative reaction.
Well, so a lot of it is just with so first of all, the bill is only what, like 5 or 6 pages?
5 pages, yes.
One page of that is talking about the bathroom ordinance. The rest of it talks about how pretty much it says that the only legislation that prevents discrimination of one group or another has to be passed on the state level. And so it invalidates all local ordinances that prevent discrimination. And I think that that's really one of the main parts that people are upset about.
That is one of the main parts. And it's only in terms of contracting with the state, actually. I believe it was like Raleigh, Clayton, and 4 other cities had city ordinances in place where if you wanted to contract for the state, you had to have a anti-LGBTQ discrimination policy at your business. And yes, the law overrides that. However, the parties still being protected from discrimination are the ones already protected at the federal level, already protected in North Carolina. It doesn't really change anything except in those 6 cities.
So I'm just going to spell out to you kind of like the liberal response to this bill. So I have 3 problems with it. The first of which is just the moral or the obvious moral and like ethical argument of just, for me, it's just taking a step backwards rather than forwards when it comes to equality. You know, be like allowing discrimination. So that's like a really basic argument to me. I don't really see why we need to go into it because I think it's pretty like well set in its own. The second thing that I don't like about it is that the bill is not even effective at its like very debatable goal. So from what I can tell, there are two things that the bill is trying to accomplish. One of which is trying to prevent awkward bathroom interactions. And the second one is that it's trying to protect people from being like assaulted or sexually assaulted, right? And so the first problem I have with that is that with this bill, awkward bathroom interactions are still gonna happen. For example, there's a transgender activist named Michael Hughes. It's a female and a male transgender individual, and he's gone on Instagram, and he's going around the state, and he's taking pictures of himself in women's bathrooms just to see how much he sticks out. And we're gonna show you one of these pictures, and you can tell that he really sticks out in that bathroom. So in that regard, with this bill, you're now gonna have people that have gone through the reassignment that are looking very, very strange in those bathrooms. And then the second point is that it's trying to, and it says it in the bill, that it's trying to protect people. I think that argument is kind of bigoted on its face because it relies on the assumption that transgender people commit violent crimes and sexual assaults at a higher rate than the rest of the populace, which couldn't be anywhere further from the truth. So male to female transsexuals commit crimes at the same rate that general males do. But the key here is that they get victimized at a much, much higher rate. They have a 1 in 2 chance of being sexually assaulted, 1 in 2. So if the argument is that we have to protect people and keep people safe, then I really don't think that there's really any merit to that argument because they're not more predisposed to crime.
Now I'm going to hit your first point first. The man going around to the bathrooms, you said he's reassigned? So he doesn't have to use the women's bathroom. He just goes and gets his birth certificate changed, and he can use the male's bathroom.
How easy is that to do?
A lot easier than having your gender reassigned, I would imagine. Now, my thing with the bill, and I think the main thing it does, is that it allows businesses to set the bathrooms as they want. There was a brewery, I believe in Wilmington or Charlotte, I don't remember, who said originally they wanted to have an all unisex bathroom. They can do that under this new law. For your second point, the thing is there was no legal line. There was no legal line as to what constitutes a man or which bathroom you should use. Now, beforehand, if you're just, I feel like a woman, I can use the women's bathroom. Or if a female said, I feel like a man, she could use the men's. The reason they said this is because it set a legal line. There was a legal something you could look at and say, hey, they're a man on their birth certificate, they can use the men's restroom. Now, and coupling the two together, if I went to a gym or like a country club or whatever, where there's, girls sports teams, whatever, I could go in there, hang out and be like, nah, I feel like a woman. So that's why they set that line. That's why they set that standard for people to judge on.
So you're saying that businesses should be able to make their own decisions on what bathrooms people are using?
They should be able to make their own decisions on just about anything, in my opinion.
I feel like that's similar to the argument that business owners would have been making back before the civil rights era, saying that, oh, well, I mean, we can separate, and have black people having to eat outside and not at the counter, and then having the white people in here because that's our right and this, that, and the other.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, it always gets pushed back to, this is what they did in the 60s, whatever. But in my opinion, I don't think you should discriminate against anyone. This goes all the way back to economics. Milton Friedman said, if there's a profit, you should go for it. However, just like PayPal not wanting to go to things, some people have convictions that are higher than money. So, and at the end of the day, it's their money, it's their business. If they want to refuse service, no, I don't think it's right, but it is their money and their service. And that's what freedom is.
You mentioned drawing the legal line in the sand. That's actually really problematic. There are a couple reasons why this law might be declared unconstitutional. But first of all, the bill violates Title IX of the Education Amendments in 1972, which rebukes the federal mandate forbidding against discrimination of transgender students. And so that very much jeopardizes the $4.5 billion in government funding to our education system that we get. I'm not saying that it's 100% going to happen, but it at least most certainly jeopardizes it. Also seeing how upset everybody is about it. But secondly, I think that this bill is unconstitutional because it violates the 14th Amendment, particularly the Equal Protection Clause. There's actually a Supreme Court case that happened in 1996 that's actually really similar to this one. It was a Colorado State constitutional amendment that was struck down by the court in a 6-3 decision that puts, let's see, it did, pretty much it was like the constitutional amendment that we had here in North Carolina. And it was struck down by the court because they said, I think this was Kennedy in his decision wrote that it singled out homosexual and bisexual persons, imposing on them the right to seek and receive specific legal protection from discrimination. So it violates their constitutional rights because it prevents them from passing legislation that prevents them from being discriminated against, because that's what the bill says, that you can't have local ordinances.
What was the Colorado law that was shot down?
It was very similar to the constitutional amendment that we had here in North Carolina, pretty much saying that that gay people didn't have the right to marry, businesses could refuse service, things of that nature. But also gender, when it comes to constitutionality, it requires intermediate scrutiny, which is like kind of a big legal word. Yeah. But I'll explain it here in a second. Yeah. So pretty much what it means, this is for like all equal protection clause kind of arguments. Intermittent scrutiny is when the law must further an important government interest by means that are substantially related to that interest. And so from reading the bill, what I could find is that the interest that's talked about in the bill is public safety, or making sure that people aren't being discriminated against, which is a little bit kind of like contrary on its face. But part of what the bill argues is that anti-discrimination is so important that it shouldn't be handled at a local level, and that instead it should be handled at a state level, so it's a really expansive kind of thing that covers everybody. But the problem that I have with that when it comes to the constitutionality of it is that they're not saying, this bill isn't trying to further the interest of not having people discriminated against, because it's taking away their protection of being discriminated against. So this bill, I don't really think furthers any legitimate state interest.
All right, you've been talking for a minute.
I'm
gonna
go back to your
sorry,
I had to go on a little
to your Title IX argument.
There.
Is that the bill is that the bill only applies to multi-use changing rooms, and the majority, if not all, schools in North Carolina have single-use bathrooms. Now, yeah, it'll be kind of a pain for a transgender student to go all the way to wherever the single-use bathroom is. However, I don't think we'll lose funding over that.
But it's at least debatable.
It is debatable, for sure. But however, due to the nature of the law just applying to multi-use bathrooms, I think legally in a court it could be defended. However, the constitutionality, I think we will see a lawsuit coming out of that. A lot of people are threatening the lawsuit.
The ACLU has actually already filed one.
All right, so there you go. And the constitutionality of that, it's really up for debate. It really depends if you think it discriminates against people that much, because again, it's only people in transition, and it's only people who it only applies to public facilities, and I think the majority of them also have single-use restrooms, and if not, I think we'll see a large increase in those being installed.
So intermittent scrutiny, it says that it's got to be substantially related to a specific government interest, right? And so I really don't think that the bill, the way it's written, really helps any legitimate state interest other than not giving people rights.
Now, the two reasons for the bill are to define what a gender is and which bathroom you're supposed to use. The other is for economic freedom, and I don't think either of those really go against the Constitution.
From my reading of the bill,
and I think both are in the interest of the government.
From my reading of the bill, especially for the bathroom ordinance, it seemed that public safety was their main rationale there.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
I mean, I don't know the figures, how many people are, raped in bathrooms or sexually assaulted in bathrooms off the top of my head. But, I mean, I think it's definitely there. And at the minimum, I mean, I'm sure you've been in the school gym, but seeing naked older dudes walking around is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, especially the females in North Carolina. So, yeah, I think it does protect some people. The original Charlotte bathroom ordinance didn't allow private clubs, gyms, etc. to do as they pleased in regards to how their bathroom and changing facilities were set up. What's more worrisome is that the author of the Charlotte ordinance, Chad Severance, was convicted of molesting a minor while he worked as a youth minister. Given this information, do you believe politicians at the state level, including Senate Democrats, who unanimously walked out rather than supporting the bill, made a mistake in passing HB2?
I think that whoever was in charge of trying to get that Charlotte ordinance passed made a mistake by having that person be leading the charge. I'm not really that up to date on Chad Severance, but if that's true, that was a horrible decision to put his face on that.
He was convicted in the early 2000s. He was a youth minister and was convicted of luring young boys back to his apartment.
But that being said, positions, and especially, like, I would say this is a moral position like this one, are a lot bigger than just the people that propose them, And so, obviously, I'm not going to support some child molester guy, but I think that the meaning of the Charlotte ordinance is really pertinent, and I think I think that his past shouldn't keep us from making strides towards having a more inclusive society.
Well said. But one of the reasons they stated in overruling that ordinance was to keep bathrooms safe. So when you have a child molester drafting a bill and the Republicans overriding it on keeping people safe, it naturally doesn't look good. But back to the Charlotte ordinance. Now, the NBA is saying that they're not going to allow, I believe it's the 2017 All-Star game.
All-Star game, yeah.
They're saying they might not allow that over HB2. However, when they signed on with Charlotte, the original Charlotte ordinance hadn't been passed. So virtually nothing has changed in Charlotte on them making this decision. Do you think they're just trying to appeal to people getting all riled up, or what do you think they're trying to do here?
I think that something is different in the fact that discrimination is now de jure legal in North Carolina. You look at, like, there's just list and list of just CEOs and company after company after company decrying what we're doing here,
I don't think any discrimination other than what was already legal to be discriminated against has been made legal in North Carolina. I think
the bill actively
the only
says,
protected classes that are listed in the bill are the ones that were already protected under North Carolina law and under federal law.
Well,
North Carolina law went a step further and added biological gender.
Well, like I said earlier, the victimization rates of transgender people, do you think that they should not also be protected?
They should, but how are you going to protect transgender persons by passing laws? Now, there's discrimination laws.
Yeah,
and
anti-discrimination laws, but we can't do that anymore.
Yeah, well, there's discrimination laws, but I mean, we're talking victimization rates. So assaults, batteries, sexual assaults. You're going to pass laws specifically making assault and battery legal? They already are.
Hate crime laws.
They're already passed. So assault and battery is one thing, discrimination is a whole different thing. Now, there's also coming out recently was PayPal saying, hey, we're not going to allow these 400 jobs to go to Charlotte, and I think the average salary of those was $50,000. Do you have any thoughts on that? Are they in the right here, or are they?
Well, I mean, I don't want to disincentivize any company from coming to North Carolina, but when I read that story, I wasn't surprised. I've heard a lot recently about CEOs making similar kind of statements.
Now, would it surprise you if PayPal does business in 6 countries where being homosexual is punishable by death, and 19 where it's explicitly illegal to be gay?
PayPal's a big company. I can see that.
Yeah. So is there a little cognitive dissonance when they're saying, "Oh no, we're not allowing trans people to pick their bathroom in a public setting," while they're doing business in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain?
I would say that there is a little bit of cognitive dissonance there. We should be trying to fight for equality everywhere. But the thing is, I mean, what change can a company make in a country like that where it's illegal to be a homosexual? I think that PayPal acted within their abilities to affect as much change as they possibly could.
Okay.
And I think that a lot of other companies are trying to do the same. And I think that, to be entirely honest, I think that the best way and the quickest way that we're going to see a change from the law that we just passed is by having businesses like PayPal coming out and making statements like this and making decisions like this, saying that if North Carolina is going to be a state of bigotry, then we're not going to do business in that state, or at least that they're not going to go out of their way to provide more jobs to people in that state.
You don't think it's an overreaction at all?
Actually, this does bring me to something that I really wanted to say about this. I think that a lot of people have been overreacting about this. On Facebook, I've seen a lot of people saying about how they're ashamed of North Carolina and how they want to leave and this, that, and the other. I'm going to say right now, I love North Carolina, and there's nothing that could happen that would make me ashamed of it, and nothing that would happen that would make me want to not raise my family here. So I think in that regard, we, especially the people on the left, they're getting really upset about it. You know, this was definitely a step back, and you know, we need to do something to change this law that was enacted. But at the same time, you know, we're a country of diverse people. And time again, we've been presented with really difficult challenges that we have been able to come together and solve collectively. So in that regard, I think that some people are overreacting a little bit, but they need to keep their faith in government, in democracy, and most importantly in the state of North Carolina. Because even after this bill, I still love it. But, you know, I am very much incentivized to affect some change.
Well said. All right.
I think that we can agree on that. North Carolina is still a good state.
All right.
See you.
Let's pop champagne.